What's up, guys? It's Jake from Team Insanity. I have a few guns that I'm going to be doing a general basic gun maintenance show on because people have been asking, hey, do a gun maintenance video. Okay, so there's a lot of guns out there in the world, okay? There's more than one gun, so I'm just going to try to cover a little wide spectrum of them today and sort of break some of them down for you and show you how to do it. So basically, one of the things is that I can tell you though is if you're having any problems, say with velocity or chopping or anything like that, the first thing they always do is change your battery, okay? Change your battery on your gun. I'm always going to say that. Put a good battery in your gun. I'm not talking no shitty ass, Kroger brand, battery gas station, okay? I'm talking a good Energizer, a good Duracell, something like that. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're having issues with your gun, most of the time I've seen it's been a battery, okay? So, unless if it's a leaking issue. So what we're going to do, now we got that out of the way, I'm going to show you how to service some tips and tricks and that kind of stuff on some guns that I'm going to maintenance for you guys. So, yeah, let's do it. Alright, so first things first, what we're going to maintenance is an inline poppet. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is, this is an axe. You can't mess with the regulator. You cannot take apart this regulator for many reasons because Empire's gay. Just long story short, not going to get into it. Make sure your regulator is no higher than 200 psi or else it is going to break. So with this, the axe runs on this cool little retention system. I'm going to go off camera to get this axe bolt out because God only knows how long this thing has been taken to get maintenance because it's Jacob's gun. Holy shit, Jacob, how much dirt is in this? There we go. So you run it on that little track, you pull it out, you're going to have a little spring in here, okay? And that spring should come off, but, it's not because it's Jacob's gun, so. There we go. Wow, that's a lot of fucking dirt that's cummed up in there. Oh my sweet lord. Jacob's guns are always fun to do. So we're going to take the spring and put it off the side. Most guns with the springs, you don't really have to do a whole lot, okay? This bolt, very, very, very easy to maintenance. There's not a ton on here. If you're going to have any issues leaking, most of the time the axe O-rings, at least what I have found, these O-rings aren't going to be the issue, okay? So we're just going to wipe this off. Now if you're having issues with it leaking, with an axe or any, and this is an inline poppet, okay, so this is, what I mean by inline poppet is the poppet is integrated into the bolt itself, okay, this is that's sort of what it means, but it's a smoother style poppet gun. It's sort of like a fake spool in a way, so let's just take this, and what you're going to do is you're just going to wipe this down. So if you're having any type of issues on a bolt style like this, like leaking down the barrel or having sealing issues, most of the time it's going to be on these O-rings, okay? Because you have to think about the airflow, where the air is going to come from. The air is going to come out of this bolt tip to shoot the paintball, okay? So a lot of the times, if you're going to have air leaking down the bolt, or down the barrel, so if you air up your gun and you hear a just leaking down the barrel, what I mean by down the barrel, if you can put your finger in here and feel it, that's 9 times out of 10 going to be one of these O-rings, okay? Because you have to remember, it's just purging down over here, okay? So it's just venting down there. I believe it's most likely going to be this O-ring right here, this back O-ring and this front O-ring. You can also replace this O-ring as well if you still keep on having issues. And then you go to the outside O-rings. And most of the time, like I said, follow the airflow, okay? So if the air is leaking out the forward of the gun, follow the direction of the air, okay? So you kind of have to think logically about it. Okay, well, the air, if it's leaking out of the bolt, the air is not up here, okay? Yes, air is up here, but if it's leaking, it's coming down here. So that means the air is coming from over here. That's where it's venting from, okay? Also, one of the things is with the inline poppets is if it doesn't stop leaking down the bolt, sometimes it's your poppet, especially with the axes. Sometimes you have issues with the poppet, but these guns are pretty much bulletproof for the most part. There's not much that can really go wrong with these. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the stock lube, and I'm going to show you how much lube that you really want to put on any type of gun. With an axe, you can use thicker type of lube. With an inline poppet, you can use thicker lube, okay? So you can, that's like hater sauce, well, not even hater sauce, but hater marmalade, Tech gun salve, pathogen super grease, even though that's not even a really thick one. More so Tech gun salve or the stock Empire grease. But you can see how much I'm putting on there. I mean, you can put a decent amount on there. So I'm just going to put some on here like this. But as you can see, I'm lubing the O-rings. I'm not necessarily just lubing all of this spot over here, because the O-rings is what needs the lube, because that's what creates the seal, okay? So when you look, when I'm lubing this gun, I'm lubing these O-rings, and they're going to look nice and shiny, okay? So I put a little bit on my finger, you can't see it anymore, and I rub it around on these O-rings, okay? Because again, there's nothing to seal over here, okay? There's no O-rings on this back part of the green bolt, okay? You can put a little bit on there so it doesn't scratch and cause friction. I always put a little light amount, but you don't want to just cape lube on there, because basically you're just wasting lube and over lubing your gun. But you can see how these O-rings are shiny. There's no standing lube on here. I used a thicker grease, so this isn't going to be doesn't have to be lubed as often. I lube it after every single day of play. My guns, this is Jacob's gun, but so you can see just sort of there's no standing lube or anything like that. I'm going to put the bolt back on top of it, the bolt tip. Let me refocus it. So now I'm going to do the same exact thing. Now again, if you want to, you can give a little bit on the bolt tip. You can put a little thin amount on the bolt tip. I get the majority on the O-rings, and I just take the residuals from my finger and put it on here on mostly the bolt tip, so I get less breach wear, that kind of stuff. But you don't want to overdo it, because if you do, then you're just going to shoot the grease right down your barrel for your first few shots, and then you're going to have an oil slick barrel, and then you're not going to be shooting accurate all day. These back O-rings, if you're leaking out of the back of the gun, for the most part, this is where it's going to be. If you're leaking out of the solenoid or the grip frame, it's going to be the center O-ring, unless if it's the actual solenoid itself. So I'm just lubing this up. So this is basically all there is for an axe. Okay, an axe, a mini GS, that kind of stuff, and then you put the bolt on, or the bolt spring on the right way. Try to pop it in there. Okay, that works. I like to move it around at first, get it going, get that friction pumping. And of course, you're going to wipe down your gun and everything like that once you're all done. Slide it back into the track. Man, I'm going to have to go off camera for this, because I'd like to put it up against my body to make that final turn. Hold on. It's a little bit tough with lube on your fingers. Okay, this is a Gtech. This is another type of spool. Okay, you can see how easy it is to disassemble the bolt. But let me bring it up close here. So again, you can see there's not a ton of O-rings on this bad boy, so there's not much that can really go wrong. So I don't know if you can see these back O-rings. So again, with a spool that's sort of designed like this, I mean, you have all you have your inner cans and everything, but you can see there's a few O-rings back here. If you're leaking from the back, you're most likely going to be leaking from these O-rings. The bolt tip, you know, there's one O-ring up here. You're most likely never going to have to change that, so we're not going to actually really worry about that much. Again, you're going to want to lube it, but you're not going to overly grease this. Now again, this is not a moving part, okay? This part right here, this blue part that I'm pointing at, okay, this is not a moving part here at all. None of this is moving, okay? The only thing that moves on this is this, okay? The bolt release, okay? The quick bolt release. There's nothing, this does not really move on the inside of the gun. It's the bolt that moves, okay? This is what moves, okay? So you don't need to lube this up here. I mean, yeah, you seal this O-ring, but if you put lube up here, you're wasting your lube. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your lube, and there's no point in it. And then again, if you don't want to over lube random parts of the gun, so I'm going to just separate this. Now on some of the spools, such as the Gtech, you're going to want to get the bolt out. Sometimes you're going to want to take this front O-ring off. Okay, so how you're going to want to change an O-ring, any type of changing an O-ring or anything like that, is say this is a bad O-ring, okay? What I like to do, what Rob taught me when I first had my Dangerous Power G4, what I like to do is I like to pinch the side of the O-ring. This is what he taught me. If you pinch the side of the O-ring, maybe if I can get it right. Let me see. See, if I pinch the side of that O-ring, you can see it start to slowly raise. If I pinch it with my finger, you can see my gnarly scar on my thumb. but you can see it slowly start to raise up, so you can get a finger on it, so you don't have to use an O-ring pick. So if I pinch it, I'm gonna try to get it again. If I pinch it, you're gonna see a little lip, so you can dig your thumb underneath of it. But yeah, you're gonna pinch your O-ring. You just take your other fingernail and flick it off. Okay, so that's what you're gonna want to do for most die guns, that kind of stuff. Not necessarily, you're not gonna do this with this gun, because what you can do is just push this all the way through. Sometimes you don't want to do that on some of the O-rings that stick out more than the Gtech O-ring, just strictly because it's gonna grab. There's an inner O-ring inside of here, as you're probably not gonna be able to see that, but there's an inner O-ring on the inside of here. Okay, there's another black O-ring. So you're also going to want to make sure that you lube that, because that's another moving part that creates a seal. Okay, if you're leaking down the bolt, most likely it's going to be this O-ring right here. Remember, follow the direction of the airflow. If I take a look at this bolt, where is the air coming from? Okay, the air is going to be coming from these holes back here. Okay, this is where the air is going to be coming from. Right here, you can see no air is really gonna, I mean, yeah, there's gonna be a little bit of air back here, but if it's leaking down the barrel, okay, air is gonna be coming out of here. These holes are milled, from my understanding, for air to get to this bolt tip. This sail, I believe this is gonna be called the sail O-ring on this. I'm gonna call it the sail. But this O-ring right here is what's gonna create that seal, so it doesn't just purge down the bolt tip. So again, follow the direction of air. Just me using common sense, me just taking my best educated guess. That's what these holes are milled for the air to, you know, come out of that area. So again, we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna lube up the Gtech. So you're gonna untwist this, and now we're gonna have this moving, all these extra moving parts. Again, you're not gonna really have many issues with this, but again, if you're leaking down the barrel, follow the direction of airflow. Okay, this came out from inside of here. This is going to create another seal in here, so it's probably going to be this O-ring over here that might not have a good seal, that's purging air somewhere in there. So again, you're just, if you sort of have to think about it logically. If I'm leaking out of the back, if I'm leaking out of my back cap, it's most likely one of my back cap O-rings, okay? If I am leaking down my barrel, let's follow the direction of the airflow, so that way I can see if I can actually find where that leak is coming from. I have a little spring in here, no big deal. But I'm just gonna see how I just wipe everything off. You don't wanna just re-lube everything, okay? You wipe everything off, you're gonna come back in, we're gonna take a little bit of the plain Eclipse grease. I'm not going to use that much. That's a lot on my finger, but I'm going to spread it around. Okay, so I'm going to put some on both O-rings. I'm going to spread it around. Not too much to where it's over lubed. You're not going to see any standing lube. This stuff is nice and white, so I can see what I've lubed and what I haven't lubed. I do enjoy the nice white lube that Plain Eclipse gives. Sort of like a Dow 33, basically. So I'm not really getting into all the names of the bolts, all the different parts of the bolts, but I'm going to put this spring back in here because that's where that came from. I'll put it back where it came from. I'm going to take this. Is there any inner, I'm going to look and see if there's any inner O-rings, which there's not, but I can see that there's some dirt and crud in this, which could eventually cause an O-ring to snip, so I'm just going to wipe that off. This, I'm going to do this. And before I screw this on, I'm looking and I'm seeing, oh look, there's an O-ring right here as I'm screwing it on, okay? So if I keep on screwing, you can see there's a back O-ring, so I'm screwing this on, and that O-ring is going to eventually create a seal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw it in just a wee bit, just so it stays there. I'm going to take a little bit of lube, because that's an O-ring, that's going to create a seal, and I'm going to put a little dab of lube on there, and I'm going to be able to lube this back O-ring plus the threads. I'm going to set this down for a second. I'm going to be able to spread this lube around. And I'm going to hit this O-ring while I'm here. I'm going to work it around, hit this O-ring. You can see I'm not lubricating every single thing that's blue on this O-ring. I'm hitting the O-rings, the parts that create the seals. The O-rings are what makes the seals, not everything on the bolt itself. So remember, you want to lube the O-rings, you don't want to just blindly lube everything, because then you're going to over lube. Again, now that we're in here, there's an inner O-ring in here, so we want to make sure that we get the inner O-ring, okay? Let's make sure that we lube this inner O-ring. not too much. And I'm just gonna barely lube just the inside of this just for a little bit less friction. I'm just gonna lightly coat it. I'm not really putting that much on there. Bolt tip, that's gonna go inside of the, I believe that's what Plain Eclipse is calling their can, or their, I'm not sure what they're calling it. I'd have to bust out the manual and see. Then we're gonna put just a little bit on this bolt, a little bit on these back O-rings, because that's also what helps create a little seal. And you see how long that took me. Okay, about 5 minutes to maintenance a gun. Woohoo! Look at how hard that was. Really, really hard. Jacob should take notes, but instead he's reading Reddit and giving me the middle finger because he doesn't like cleaning his gear because he's a piece of shit. Lubing up the back O-rings. Again, there's this front O-ring using minimum lube. Just gonna get that front O-ring nice and moist. Boom. Look at that, Gtech maintenance, okay? That was so damn hard to comprehend, okay? So now, if you're having, again, if you're having chopping issues, if you're having detent, or basically if you're having, if you're chopping a lot of paint and you don't know why, change your battery like I said at the very beginning. But now we're gonna check the eyes of this gun. So I'm just gonna do one. So these are normally the eye and detent cover. The M2 is a little bit different. I'll get into that. It's integrated inside. So I'm just going to use this because this is a really, really good example of a good spool valve gun here. I'm just going to find the right Allen key. Maybe I can do it on my first time, which I did. So this is your eye cover. This is your eye and detents cover right here. So what I'm going to do, my God, once I get lube on my hands, it's like all over. It's kind of hard. I'm going to unscrew that. Make sure that you don't lose your screws. Okay, so let's zoom it in real quick and I'm going to show you. Okay, so here's your eyes. Okay, so first, if you change your battery 1 or 2 times and it's still not reading, if it's still not reading balls and if it's still chopping, here's what your eyes are. Okay, this is 9 times out of 10 what your eyes are going to look like. I'm just going to try to peel it back with my finger. Okay, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clean both sides. I'm just going to clean one side because I know these eyes aren't dirty. You're going to want to take a Q-tip. Okay, I'm not going to take the microfiber that I just got lube all over because that's not going to be any good. That's going to be really stupid of me. You're going to take a piece of cotton ball or, I don't know, a clean rag, anything that you really want that is clean, that's 100% clean, a tissue or something, and go ahead and wipe those off. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to push up the detent. As you can see, I'm fingering the Gtech, pleasuring it very, very nicely. I am going to pull up. This is what the little detent looks like. Okay, so let me try to focus it. This is what a detent looks like. This is what holds your balls so they don't roll out of the barrel. Okay, if they're permanently flushed all the way forward, or if they're not there, then it's time to change your detents. That's probably why you're breaking paint, because it's slipping past the eyes, or you're just having issues. So you're going to want to wipe these off and all that, and you're going to want to place them back in. So that's what this little black thing is right here. That's your detents. Okay, I'm going to place it back into the Gtech. Very, very simple stuff, guys. All paintball guns require this. Okay, you need to do maintenance on your guns. So if you're having chopping issues, that's what you do. Just gonna go ahead and tighten that down. Boom, look at that. So I cleaned the eyes, I cleaned the detents, and I cleaned the bolt in less than 10 minutes. So Gtech is done, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to bring out a different style gun. What is this? A JT Impulse. Okay, so as you can see, this is a poppet that's a stacked tube type poppet. Okay, why it's called a stacked tube is because it's 2 tubes, 2 pieces of poop stacked on top of each other. Okay, this is a tube, this is a tube, it's stacked. This is your rammer, this is your bolt. A little bit different than what we've just seen. Here's your bolt. 9 times out of 10, you're not gonna have to do anything to this bad boy. Okay, so if you're having chopping issues, anything like that on one of these, sometimes, I don't know how, because it's black on black, that you can see there's O-rings. This front O-ring, if you splice this front O-ring, your gun's normally it's not going to leak, okay? Because you still have these 2 back O-rings back here, because here's where the air is going to catch the bolt. want to make sure that goes in forward, but here's where the air is going to be, and that's where it's going to be coming out right there. So remember, follow the direction of air. Okay, there should be no reason if it's leaking out of the bolt that these O-rings should really cause a huge issue, because follow the path of air. Here's where the air is going to be coming out of the bolt right here. Yeah, there's a little seal right here that you would check. But if you're chopping paint or not getting any velocity, this is what your problem is going to be. This front O-ring on those poppet style guns, because if you're getting like 210 feet per second or something like that, then this O-ring's gone, because what this is going to do, this O-ring right here is going to create that seal, so when the air comes out to push the paintball out, okay, that this is going to create a little seal right here, so when it's going to hold the air right here, so it doesn't just leak out and, you know, and just sort of poop out wherever it goes. You're not going to hear it leak normally. At least on my Resurrection, my bolt is designed, I mean, it's basically the same exact bolt. And this is in here, I'm having velocity issues, and that's strictly because there's nothing to keep the air from going back. Okay, so it's just a waste of air. It makes it very inefficient. You have to turn the regulator up all the way to get it to at least shoot 300 feet per second. So that is normally what happens. These O-rings normally don't have to be replaced unless if you're chopping paint, that kind of stuff. Where you're leaking is gonna come is from the rammer. This is the rammer back here. Okay. Let's go ahead and you see what size O-ring that is. Not O-ring, wrench that is. Didn't get it on my first time, wasn't lucky. So now normally these don't really, you don't have to put grease on this bolt. Okay, I don't recommend it. Don't put grease on the bolt. Okay, more so put a little light oil. Light oil. Let me repeat that again, light oil, because if you put heavy oil on it, all you're going to do is just shoot it right down the barrel, and you're going to have a bad time. Boom, got that. Now again, some guns are more specific. Now, we just took the back cap out, so let's just take, now where the bolt sits in, is in here in the rammer, so the rammer didn't come out all the way, so I'm going to take a little Allen key, and I'm going to push out the rest of the rammer as so. Okay, so as how the bolt sits, is like this. This is how the bolt sits in these style guns. Okay, so this is your bolt right here. Let me focus it. That's how these guns kind of work. You pull the trigger, this is going to move forward, and what's going to happen is it's going to take your bolt with it. Follow the direction of the air. Okay, if you're leaking and you're leaking air, most likely it's going to be this O-ring right here. Okay, so you just sort of have to think about it logically, because again, I told you it's going to come up through here and it's going to go into that little back hole back over there. Okay, so if you're leaking, it's most likely going to be something like that. Now on this one, you can put like a light grease on it, depending upon the manufacturer. Some companies, some people say different things. I like to put a little light lube on it, not thick, not heavy lube, anything like that, like Dow 33, Hater sauce, Planet Eclipse grease, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to put a little Planet Eclipse grease on this bad boy. So you guys are basically seeing my point on how you maintenance your guns. It is very, very simple. So I've showed you an inline poppet. I've showed you a spool. Now I'm showing you a stacked tubed poppet valve. I'm not going to show you an autococker, because if you're doing autocockers, then you know what, then you're basically sort of on your own. I mean, I can sort of do autocockers some way, but I put very, very light oil or light grease on that. I mostly got the O-rings, and then I put a little bit on the actual rammer itself just to help with friction. I didn't over lube it. And as you can see, there's a little back O-ring back here. Oh, I wonder, so if I'm leaking out of my back cap, if there's an O-ring on the back cap, the first O-ring I'm gonna change is the back cap O-ring. Okay, just as a logical guess, just me being a logical kind of guy, if I'm just gonna think logically here, if I'm leaking from the back cap, that's what it's gonna be. And these guns barely need maintenance. Okay, these are like Eagle style guns, Egos, the Impulse, that kind of stuff. They need maintenance. I do mine every single day. Some people, say, oh, you don't need a maintenance it every single day. Sure, fine, whatever, do whatever the fuck you want. But me personally, I maintenance it every single day, or not every single day, but every day that I go to play. So after every day I play, I like to break it apart. Again, you don't really need to do nothing with the bolt. And what you have to do is line it up exactly how I put it in there. How I held it on the camera is how it needs to line up. So if you just put that down. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over die guns real quick just to go over them, because die guns are a little bit differently. You can see there's no external screws here like the last guns going to the detents, okay, because the detents and this is a Tampa Bay Damage Edition gun, but the detents are actually integrated into what die calls their eye pipe system, okay. So you can see when I pull this bad boy out, I'm being very, very careful. Holy shit, Jacob. Oh my God. When was the last time you cleaned this gun?
What is it?
Oh my sweet Jesus.
What?
Look at, that's supposed to be pure orange. It's fucking orange and white and black and yellow. Oh my sweet Lord. This gun is so abused. I feel so bad for this gun. This thing is dirty, but so I'm gonna run this underwater for him and clean this. So you clean this, okay? This is what your detents, and so if you break a ball like what happened, when the front O-ring goes through, it's gonna squeegee because your eyes are underneath here. Okay, here's where the paintball comes in. Your eyes are underneath here, so it's gonna squeegee your breech, so you don't have an eye fault, which is the coolest design I've ever seen. Some people like it, some people hate it. I personally love it because unless if you've ever had where you're shooting 12.5 PSP, and you have to be very, very careful putting it back in, okay? See how I'm not forcing it in? I'm sort of going back and forth, okay? I'm not forcing it in. I went back and forth and sort of weaseled it in, okay? Another thing is, don't twist your barrel and torque it down, because sure, you still have threads that you can twist to get it on all the way, but you have to remember you have a piece of plastic that butts up to the back of the bolt, okay? So if you keep on twisting your barrel because you have more threads, all you're gonna do is compress that piece of plastic that's in there, and you're just gonna break it. So it's 9 times out of 10 these guns break from user error, okay? Mostly. So, but anyways, people don't understand until you actually have an eye fault what it's like shooting without eyes, because most of the guns that are designed, they shoot slowly so you don't chop any more paint. So like now you can sort of program it, so if you have that issue you can sort of go over top of that. But like on Plain Eclipse guns, when I had the Gtech 5 and I had that ball breaking issue, oh my sweet Lord, it was terrible, because I was trying to shoot 12.5 to keep up with everyone, but then it was just eye faulting, so it only shoot like 5 balls a second, and you don't actually put it in the rammer, it's not gonna do you any good. You have to line it up and put it in with the rammer itself. Okay, and how to test that, as I can tell that's not in. You can normally feel it catch and grab. Okay, I think that is in. So how I check is I push it forward, and sometimes the valve on the inside of here is going to push it back. It's going to show a little resistance. So that is, believe, yep, it was in. That's normally how I check, is I just like to push it forward because there's the valve in there. And if it bounces back a little bit, see how that's bouncing back on its own? Because there's a little valve in here, there's that little air valve that comes through the regulator. It's going to push that back a little bit. So, because when you shoot, that air is going to push it back, pressurize this, so then it cocks itself back, basically. So that's sort of how you check that. So now I'm taking the NT11 bolt out, and so as you saw when I was doing the Allen key, all I did was just a short little maybe like 2.5 turns. Because if I can keep twisting it, because the thing is going to keep on twisting, but if you keep on twisting, all you're going to do is just separate the cam and the body. So let's, oh my god, dude, this gun, holy shit. I don't even know when the last time, Jacob, I'm taking this gun home. I'm gonna save this gun. This is just so sad. I am like depressed looking at this gun. Oh my god, what is that? Holy shit, someone just like destroyed this thing trying to put the spacers on it. Oh my god. It's always a mystery what you're gonna get with Jacob's gun. So this is what an NT bolt looks like. And again, so this is, I'm gonna try to show you again on the die, on this blue bolt here, or on the blue O-ring here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit, if I can focus it. So if I pinch the edge here, you can see the lips start to form. And I just put my finger up and see how I did that? That's how you change O-rings right there. So now that I've gone over how to change O-rings and how to fix that kind of stuff, now you sort of know. That's sort of a quick tip. That's how you get outside O-rings off. How do you get inside O-rings off? You're gonna have to use an O-ring pick. That's the safest way. I mean, that's the easiest way. Okay, so as you can see, there's an O-ring, an inner O-ring that's supposed to be orange, but it looks fucking black. This gun, this entire gun needs a rebuild because it is just abused from Jacob himself. You can see, I mean, there's, oh my god, this gun is just, poor thing. So there's a few differences between the NT bolt and the DM bolt. Let me just lay it out. So this is technically your sail O-ring here. So I'm gonna put it right over here like this so you guys can see that. Here's the M2 bolt. Here's all the die guns. I'm not really gonna get into Bob Long. Because if you get into Bob Long, have fun. It takes, now this bolt can break down. I can take off this back cap if I wanted to, and I can separate this part, but I'm not going to. Again, I'm going to do the same exact thing with this O-ring. Sometimes what I do is if this front blue O-ring is actually lubed up too much, what I'll do is I will pinch it with the cloth, so my hands, especially if because I have lube all over my hands right now, I'll pinch it with the edge of the cloth as like this. So like this, I mean, so I can get better grip on the O-ring. So this is basically, so now what you're looking at here is that you're looking at the red O-ring here is the sail O-ring. Let me try to get it into focus better here. So you have the sail O-ring here to where you have like a sail O-ring over in here. So, and these are two bumpers. Normally you're not gonna have to replace these. So this is sort of a difference of breakdown between the NT and the DM bolt. Smoother, faster. Smoother, faster, okay? You can see this has this is a lot bigger and a lot thicker to move, okay? The reason why the NTs are so fast is that the NTs were faster. They're not as smooth as the DMs. You could get, you have to remember the NTs came out and, you know, NT10 means 2010, NT11 2011. NPPL was still around. They were made for speed. People were still playing NPPL over the PSP. NPPL was semi, 15 balls a second, okay? So you needed a gun to keep up with that high rate of speed. So if you're an NPPL team, more teams in the NPPL, instead of shooting a die DM, they'd shoot an NT, just because it'd keep up with that rate of fire to where you can comfortably shoot a DM at about 12 balls per second. So you have to sit here and look at the bolt and see the two differences, okay? You're basically looking at quarter of the size with this. This entire thing has to move to shoot a ball, okay? You're looking at just this little itty bitty piece right here. So what happens is the air comes through here and it shoots this bolt forward and it comes back really, really hard. It's the same thing with the Onslaught and the Insights. People are like, Bob Long makes such smooth guns. What happened with the Onslaught and Insight? Same exact thing. The Onslaught and the Insight are made more for speed. They're not made for the smoothness. So this bolt is gonna shoot forward and come back very, very fast, to where the DM bolt, look at how long this behemoth is, okay? Look at how many more O-rings you have on the bolt face itself. So this thing is gonna slowly move, and you're gonna get a smoother shot with, you're gonna use a little bit more air. Technically you're gonna use more air in both of them, but compared to a poppet valve. But this thing is gonna slowly move. You have a lot of O-rings, a lot of seals, everything on this. It's gonna cushion the ball. It's gonna be really nice and slow and come back really slow. That's why when I was trying to shoot the M2 at 15-20 balls per second, it would shoot, but this thing is really long and really sort of, I mean, it's not necessarily heavy compared to a Tippmann bolt. I sort of use heavy lightly, but it's heavy compared to this, okay? It's definitely heavy compared to this, because this is what's moving in the NT, okay? So you have to remember is that if you're shooting uncapped semi and you're shooting mass rates of fire with the DM versus the NT, you have to think about the differences. Look at the bolts, how they're made. This bolt is bigger, longer, slower, heavier. This bolt is smaller, or I'm not small, this one's a lot bigger. This one's smaller and faster, but you have to remember, because it's cycling at such a high rate of speed, it's not going to be as smooth as when you slow down the bolt, use a little bit more air, and you cushion the ball, that sort of stuff. So you have to think about the gun. You sort of have to break down different guns, and you get to see the differences in how they work. That's the breakdown of the DM and the NT. So other than that, now since I've sort of showed you, and you're just going to lube this up exactly the same. You're just going to, this gun is already lubed, ready to go to the giveaway winner, whoever claims this gun, because we just filmed that today. I'm missing, yeah, so here we go. So I'm just going to put this on. Just going to slide this O-ring back on, and how you slide on an O-ring, let me zoom it in here. So it's going to be sort of the similar way. Die also has color-coded O-rings, so you can't mess it up. So this is a blue O-ring. So say you chop a blue O-ring, you know you need to put a blue O-ring on this. So basically I put it in the groove, because there's an O-ring groove slotted out for this, and then you're going to slide it on. So same thing with the NT. I'm not going to use too much grease. Let me put this in. I know it's out of focus. Give me 1 second. So again, if it's leaking down the bolt, or if I'm having leaking issues, I'm going to figure out where it's leaking and why it's leaking with the direction of the airflow. If it's leaking down the bolt, I know, hey, look, there shouldn't be any air up here on these O-rings for the most part. Okay, the air is going to be coming through in here to make this bolt cycle, because the air is going to be coming out of the bolt tip. How does the bolt tip line up? Okay, so if the bolt tip is right here, and if it's leaking down here, it's got to be one of these O-rings. Okay, so that's going to be the first O-rings I'm looking. So you have to logically work your way through fixing your gun. Okay, now you know what? If it's leaking out of the back cap, I wonder, look, I'm just going to replace this one first, and then I'm going to slowly start going down the line. So you have to think logically when you're fixing your gun. There's a lot to it. But once you get used to it, once you get used to fixing guns, it gets very, very easy very quick, okay? You're just going to see some differences and some similarities, but you just have to think. You have to think through them logically, okay? So think through it. If you're having issues, if you're leaking from the solenoid, try to line up where's the solenoid compared to where these O-rings are at, okay? Before we rule out that it's a broken solenoid, let's sort of look at where these O-rings are at. And also with solenoids are one of the only solenoid, I think it's the only solenoid that I know of. Holy shit, that's black. This gun, no wonder it's leaking. It needs to be completely redone. But I'm sitting here thinking, oh, the die, there's just a few guns that have a few different features, like the die have a purging solenoid. So you can't overpressurize your solenoid. What that means is, if you're having too much air going through your HPR or your LPR, and for the NT would be an HPR, just strictly because the NT doesn't have an HPR, where the DM has a LPR and an HPR. LPR is a low pressure regulator. Not going to get into the regulators because you don't need to maintenance them that often. But so I'm just, just think about it. But you have to remember is that the die guns have solenoids that purge themselves, okay? So what I mean by purging is that if you overpressurize it, it's going to make sure that it's going to, it won't blow up. So it's sort of mess around with your pressures. Your HPR is probably, I talk about it in all the die reviews. Shit, I kind of forgot I need to put the bolt on first. So again, I'm going to wipe off the bolt. So you just sort of have to read up on the features, and once you get used to it, teching and fixing your guns becomes a breeze. So I just showed you a few guns right here that have very different bolt styles, but you have to remember they're very similar in some sense, because air is only going one way. The gun that has the big difference is the inline poppet, but when you look at inline poppets, they're all basically 100% the same. You have a rammer and then you have the bolt. You don't really worry about the bolt that much. You worry about the rammer. If you're leaking from an inline, or if you're leaking from a stacked poppet, it's gonna be on the rammer. So 9 times out of 10. So you sort of have to sit down and think, I'm leaking from here. Let's think about this. Let's sit down and think before we have a panic attack and try to sell the gun because it's a piece of shit. Let's work through it. That's what you have to do when you have guns and you want to be a gun tech. Not even a gun tech. I mean, just fixing your own guns or sending it out. Just think about it. Regulators. Now regulators, once you get your regulator set, I don't mess around with my regulators. Now how I actually like to set my die guns is I like to set the bolt forward, and then I like to turn an air on the gun, because then the bolt will suck back. And if it doesn't suck back, then there's something wrong with the airflow coming to the solenoid or getting to the bolt. And then, that's just sort of how I like to set my guns, is I like to set the bolts forward, because then I know if the gun's not cycling, and if I set the bolt forward and it doesn't suck back, then I know, hey, there's an issue probably with the regulator down the line, or there's a problem with the LPR or something like that. So I'm just gonna bring out the camera. So basically, that's it. So along with regulators, unless if you have an axe, you don't wanna maintenance your regulators. I talked about that. Same thing with the JT Impulse. Empire has warranties to where you cannot. They do not want you touching that. I think it's bullshit. But anyways, besides that, not gonna get into that in this video. Basically, regulators, do it once you have it set. Just don't mess with it, okay? There's no reason. The regulator is not a moving part like the bolt. I mean, it is a moving part, but not so much. And, you basically have to do it every, like, 30, 40 cases. So, that's it. So I showed you how to maintenance all these different guns. I maintenance Jacob's guns for them because they badly needed it, especially that NT, because it was basically black on the inside, which is not supposed to be like that. So hope this, guys, helps you out. Remember, change your battery first and then go from there. Follow the direction of airflow. Think logically. Have a great day. Okay, so on the Gtech, I'm totally taking the lube and the Allen keys because I don't know where the die toolkit went. And Nick already
I want something. I feel like I'm getting the short end of the stick with all these giveaways.
You can have the barrel sock.
I haven't gotten anything.
Here, take the barrel sock.
It's a crappy one. I don't want it.
It's one of the nice Plain Eclipse ones.
Oh. Man, I'll take that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll leave it right here.
There.
I'll never use it.
Pleasure doing business with you.
See, I feel like it's not that selfish to take this stuff because we are giving away a gun.
Yeah, they can...
But I feel like they probably need the lube and the Allen keys.
Nah, they're good. They can figure that out on their own. We're giving them a $500 gun. They can buy $10 of lube and Allen keys. It's not my problem. God, what the fuck, Jacob? Holy shit. If I can. Oh my sweet lord.